Dream is freedom, man. And here comes a free man. So stand up and witness the dream come
At the dawn of a new era in boxing, new stars ignited in the sky. Some of them blazed brightly, illuminating the heavens, while others faded into the sunset. Yet for some, it was destined to become something new, something special. And in 2005, a new, amazing, and bright star emerged in the world of boxing, and his name was Saul Canelo Alvarez. Very soon, we await his next fight. But for now, let's take a look at the great career of the modern face of boxing. The beginning. The start of a professional career. Alvarez made his professional boxing debut in October 2005 in the city of Tonala. At that time, Canelo was 15 years old. The young athlete defeated his compatriot Abraham Gonzalez. The next 3 fights also ended in victories for Saul, one of which was against Miguel Vazquez. In the summer of 2006, Alvarez fought to a draw for the first time with Jorge Juarez. After that, Alvarez won 9 consecutive fights. In August 2007, Canelo defeated Ricardo Cano and won the Jalisco State Championship belt in the welterweight division. In March 2008, he retained the title after defeating Francisco Villanueva by technical knockout. A month later, Alvarez proved to be stronger than Gabriel Martinez and became the WBC world champion in the welterweight division. Alvarez then defended his title twice in fights against Carlos Adanyares and Raul Pinzon. In 2008, at a tournament in Mexico, Alvarez made it into the Guinness Book of World Records. Saul, along with 6 relatives from the Alvarez family, received a certificate for the largest number of brothers and sisters fighting on the same boxing evening. The first title. In the summer of 2009, Canelo became the holder of the vacant WBC youth welterweight title after defeating Russian boxer Marat Kuziv. A year later, Canelo became the WBC interim champion by knocking out Lionel Cuello. Next, Alvarez won 9 consecutive victories, capturing the vacant WBC welterweight title and becoming the world champion according to the Ring, WBC, and WBA. It was already clear back then that Saul had the potential to shake up the world of boxing. But in order for people to start talking about the talented Mexican, he needed a high-profile opponent. And the name of Canelo's next opponent was the biggest in boxing: Canelo Alvarez versus Floyd Mayweather. Floyd Mayweather, considered the richest athlete in the world, signed a fantastic contract with Showtime for 6 fights, guaranteeing him $250 million. In May, Floyd made his debut fight against the sturdy but straightforward Robert Guerrero. The ratings were terrible, and the organizers' expenses were substantial. Showtime bosses set a condition for the main star: the next opponent must also be a superstar. At that time, Floyd's co-promoter was Oscar De La Hoya, which led to a corresponding offer. By the time Saul Alvarez had just turned 23, he was already a ready-made top contender, the best boxer in the middleweight division, stamping victories as consistently as today. From May 2012 to April 2013, he fought 3 bouts. The Mexican firmly established himself in the USA, faced opponents, won the love of fans, and was the perfect candidate for the best boxer on the planet in the confrontation of experience and youth.
I think that experience tonight played a major key. Just a lot of experience. And he was banking on his youth. But I still think, since I haven't took no abuse in the sport, my legs are still young. I still had spring, I still had bounce in the later rounds.
The fight was scheduled for September 13, 2013. The boxers embarked on an unprecedented press tour of 11 cities in the USA and Mexico. Tickets were sold out within days, immediately bringing organizers nearly $30 million in profit. But the deciding factor was Mayweather, who managed to impose the most uncomfortable conditions for his opponent. And most importantly, the catch weight. Alvarez was competing at the time in the middleweight division, 154 pounds, while Floyd, being a natural welterweight, insisted on the limit of 151 pounds. In the series of pre-fight documentary films, All Access, Mayweather essentially did not restrict himself in anything, for example, eating food from McDonald's. It was painful to watch Saul. Cutting weight was extremely difficult for him, and he mostly ate greens. Just look at Saul's physique.
And I respect the country of Mexico. But one thing that I always know about the sport of boxing, My fans can't fight for me, and his fans can't fight for him.
But Saul acted like a true champion. He didn't focus on the difficulties, but on the opportunities. He wasn't interested in the weight or the experience of his opponent. He wanted one thing: greatness.
En el boxeo, todos tenemos nuestro tiempo, y este es el mío.
In boxing, everybody has their time, and this is my time.
El 14 de septiembre, no nomás yo voy a ganar, vamos a ganar todos juntos.
September 14th, I'm not the only one that's gonna win. We're all gonna win together.
Gracias.
Unfortunately, on that evening, his dream turned away from him for the first time. The fight itself only confirmed the fears that Canelo had been brought into the ring against the best boxer too early. Saul simply hadn't gained enough experience to stand against the world's best boxer. Despite outweighing the American noticeably on the day of the fight, it played more against him than in his favor. At the start, Mayweather worked off Alvarez, but by the middle, he was dominating. Floyd was very fast, successfully working with his jab and at times engaging in combinations. Credit must be given to Saul's corner. They tried to change the game plan during the fight, but in vain. The American was simply toying with his opponent. There was a significant difference in class and experience. That evening, Saul couldn't offer anything against Floyd, and all the disappointment in his moments of helplessness would be remembered for years to come. After the fight, Floyd expressed respect for the future star of boxing and practically handed him the title of best boxer on the planet, then went on a well-deserved rest. In private, he called Saul the future of boxing and thanked him for the fight. The first peak of Mexican's career. After the disappointing defeat, Saul disappeared from the journalist's radar and turned his life into a Hollywood movie, where immediately after the loss, the main character returns to the ring as an entirely new version of himself. Saul beat and outclassed champions in a dominant manner. He was often recognized by celebrities, and his opponents were openly afraid of Canelo like fire. And it's true. In the ring, Alvarez showed himself to be unreachable. He didn't take significant damage, surprising everyone with his speed, agility, and tempo. Moreover, Saul developed something he never had before: a hard-hitting and destructive knockout punch. Having amassed a solid streak of 10 wins in just 2 years, Canelo once again decided to test himself in a fight against a boxing legend. Canelo Alvarez versus Miguel Cotto.
I know that's going to be huge for my country, for this country. That's where we are. It's Mexico and Puerto Rico, and on November 23rd, both countries are going to crash. We're going to receive a war. That's what people are going to have the night of November 21st, a real war.
The time-tested Puerto Rican had long been considered a top boxer and often took new boxers to school in the boxing ring. He always liked to test boxers for their class and level of skill, and this became a colossal challenge for Canelo, who had only recently emerged brightly on the boxing world's horizon.
For glory. For the people. For the middleweight championship of the world. Cotto versus Canelo.
From the first seconds of the fight, Alvarez took the position of the first number, while Cotto focused on working as the second number, with a larger number of movements. Miguel Cotto, who was supposed to be a test of strength for the Mexican in this fight, looked like a student, and Canelo like a teacher. He maximized his potential and outclassed the legendary Puerto Rican. In the championship rounds, Miguel clearly did not want to continue the fight and lost motivation to remain competitive and dangerous. So Saul did absolutely everything he wanted in the ring. At the end of the fight, the Mexican won by unanimous decision and captured the belt in the second weight category. Canelo Alvarez versus Amir Khan. After a convincing victory over Cotto, Saul didn't want to stop at what he had achieved. He needed all the biggest names in boxing, and the next step for his legacy agreed to be taken by the famous boxer.
Saturday, you're gonna see the best Amir Khan. Canelo's a tough guy, he's strong, but we're gonna be ready for whatever he brings to the table. That's the reason I chose this fight, and you never know. This could be the last fight for me and Canelo here. That's if Donald Trump becomes president. So I mean, you never know. So you have to all tune in come Saturday.
The Mexican's promoter signed a contract for a fight with the Olympic silver medalist and former champion in 3 weight categories, Amir Khan, whom some boxing experts considered the favorite in the showdown with the star boxer from Mexico. The distinctive features of the Briton were his fantastic hand speed, mastery of technique, and refined footwork.
Esperemos no sea tan difícil como pienso.
You know, he can be more difficult than Cotto. He really can because of his style. You know, so I'm not taking him lightly, and you know, I think that it's going to be a difficult fight, and I'm going to be prepared for it.
Khan started the fight fairly well and had the advantage in speed, which paid off for him in the first 2 rounds. Amir, under the guidance of his trainer Virgil Hunter, known for instilling defensive skills in his fighters, primarily acted from a defensive stance. The Briton consistently worked as the second number, retreating and occasionally unleashing combinations on his pursuing opponent. As it turned out, Canelo was initially just sizing up and adjusting to his agile and nimble opponent. In the second phase of the fight, Saul began to land punches more actively, sometimes even attempting to catch his opponent with counterattacks. However, realizing quickly that hunting for the head of such a fast opponent wasn't wise, Alvarez increasingly resorted to bodywork. The idea was to slow down the constantly energetic opponent who was maneuvering around the ring with dense, targeted punches. Alvarez didn't rush his attacks and gradually prepared for the single blow that would decide the outcome of the fight. By his style, it was evident that Canelo was only loading the gun for a shot, but wasn't in a hurry to pull the trigger. By the middle of the 6th round, Alvarez finally fired and annihilated his opponent. A distracting half jab to the body, followed by a devastating overhand to the head, made this knockout one of the brightest moments in the Mexican's career. Following the bout with Khan, Saul was officially recognized as the #1 pound-for-pound fighter, cementing his status as the biggest star in the world of boxing. Canelo Alvarez versus Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. The showdown between 2 superstars from Mexico carried intrigue for the title of King of Mexican Boxing. Julio Cesar Chavez was a competitive boxer and had all the chances to challenge Canelo's greatness. He publicly stated that Canelo lacked worthy opposition, claiming that he had only met a real boxer once, Mayweather.
With smaller fighters, I fought the best fighters I fought the best at the weight I was at with the best champions there are now. I don't see why he says that. I fought other fighters who want to move up in weight. I fought whoever is big guys. Now, ¿qué puedo decir? Estamos en esta pelea y nomás voy a esperar el 6 de mayo para que se dé cuenta de lo que es el Canelo.
There were disagreements between the boxers. Who would win, whose boxing was better, and who faced more worthy opposition. However, setting aside all differences, both boxers agreed that Mexico would definitely emerge victorious from this bout.
La apuesta que se haga aquí en el Despierta América, choquen más hacia adelante, ¿no? Aquí la a ver, señores, como caballeros aquí. Señores,
Despite Julio being dangerous and competitive, Saul jumped higher and surprised the whole world. The bout took on a one-sided nature from the first round, with Alvarez being much more active and precise, and his punches looking noticeably harder. Chavez was practically retreating throughout the entire fight, only occasionally exploding with a few punches when Canelo took small breaks, most of which landed on defense. Throughout the fight, Chavez couldn't find his rhythm, absorbing punch after punch, allowing Alvarez to feel like the dominant force in the ring. In the final rounds, the audience began to express dissatisfaction with the one-sided nature of the fight with disapproving murmurs, yet Chavez continued to play the role of a walking target. After 12 rounds, the judges unanimously awarded the victory to Alvarez with scores of 120, 108 across the board. Saul Alvarez confidently won the fight by unanimous decision, defended his titles, and threw down the gauntlet to his main opponent, whom the world had been waiting to see him face. After the fight, Gennady Golovkin himself entered the ring and graciously agreed to a potential showdown.
Who is it?
Golovkin, you are next, my friend.
Canelo Alvarez versus Triple G. There are fights where a single bout is clearly not enough to determine the winner. Such a confrontation can confidently be called the trilogy of fights between Gennady Golovkin and Saul Alvarez. It's a boxing drama that kept boxing fans on the edge for years. The first bout between GGG and Canelo took place in September 2017. At that time, Gennady had never tasted defeat. For Alvarez, it was his 52nd professional fight. Sooner or later, Golovkin had to face Canelo.
This is force supremacy. This is to see who is the best middleweight in the division, but to see who the best pound-for-pound fighter on the planet is.
No, right now it's a new story. Another story, you know. Canelo is Canelo, you know. My fight with Canelo is different story. My fight with Kale or Daniel, this is a regular fight.
Regular fight?
Regular fight. Right now is history fight. First step to history fight.
This fight was eagerly anticipated by fans. It was a collision of worlds, styles, techniques, and characters. Mexico versus Kazakhstan. Tactics against power. It seemed like every boxing fan in the world was watching this bout. Let's transport ourselves to that legendary night. The first fight took place in September 2017. In that bout, Golovkin took the lead, allowing Canelo to do what he does best, defend and counter. The first half of the fight favored Golovkin, although the effectiveness of his actions was not high. He tried to trouble his opponent, to which the Mexican responded with beautiful defensive moves and precise counterattacks. Alvarez's style in this fight clearly resembled that of Floyd Mayweather. Impeccable defense, restrained responses, and scoring points. There was no brawling, no reckless actions. Both athletes demonstrated skill and willingness to box, not just fight. In the second half, Golovkin still controlled the territory and worked as the aggressor, but Saul engaged in more aggressive work. By the championship rounds, the scorecard was approaching a draw. On one hand, Golovkin had the initiative. On the other hand, Alvarez was effective in defense and took rounds due to the opponent's low attack efficiency. Neither boxer suffered significant damage, was stunned, or knocked down. The scoring during this stretch was purely subjective. Whether to give another round for aimless walking and jab spamming or for spectacular and effective defense, the final rounds gained decisive importance, with Canelo performing better. In his attempts to find a gap in his opponent's defense, GGG raised the tempo even higher. However, it was in the championship rounds that Saul proved to be the most effective, capitalizing on Golovkin's fatigue and mistakes. The judges' verdict was very diverse. One scored an outrageous 118, 110 in favor of Alvarez. Another gave the fight 115, 113 to Golovkin, while the outcome was decided as 114, 114 by the third judge. The final result ended in a draw. Both boxers were dissatisfied with the judge's decision and quickly agreed to a rematch. The feud between the boxers took on new dimensions and justified itself as they began accusing each other of doping and various dirty tactics.
So many doctors like, you know, sent me photos, just said, look, he's muscle, you know, just injection to muscles, and he used, I don't know why his coach bring him, you know, just something like pills. I don't know, after waiting, look, I will stay. He's waiting and his pills, just for what?
A month before the fight, Canelo failed a doping test. Traces of the banned substance clenbuterol, intended for muscle tissue recovery, were found in his blood. Therefore, the fight was postponed indefinitely. During this time, Golovkin managed to defeat Martirosyan and emerged as the favorite in the upcoming bout against the Mexican.
There's a lot more animosity between the two teams than there was for the first fight. Does him testing positive for clenbuterol added to maybe your disdain for him as a fighter?
Of course, because you know, I'm true, I speak true, he like I still like a liar, you know. Every time, same situation.
You don't believe the story behind?
No, sorry, I'm a smart guy.
However, the rematch still took place on September 15, 2018, accompanied by one of the best and most expensive promotional campaigns in boxing history. At the first press conference, Saul accused Golovkin of lying.
It's impossible to knock somebody out when he fights the fight not to be knocked out. When you run, it's impossible to catch anybody.
You promised your fans that he would knock me out.
You promised us also you were going to fight the knock Golovkin out in 10. You
Les prometiste que me ibas a noquear y no me hiciste nada.
Nah, don't run.
And he didn't do anything.
No corras la siguiente vez.
Y te hablo a ti porque tu peleador no dice nada.
No corras.
Eres el que más abres el hocico.
No corras.
Tensions rose, and at the weigh-in, it felt like the boxers were ready to kill each other. It was obvious that both boxers now had the most challenging opponents in their careers.
And let's hear it for Canelo!
The fight was noticeably different from the first. Saul became more aggressive, while Gennady waited for the right moments at a safe distance. However, this didn't stop GGG from throwing more punches again. 879 against 622. The first round saw the boxers feeling each other out, but from the second round on, Alvarez took the lead. In the first half of the fight, Gennady worked from a distance and actively countered, landing powerful jabs and even causing a cut near Saul's left eye after a strong right uppercut. But during this period, the rounds went one after another into Canelo's tally. He worked a lot in combinations and delivered solid body shots in his favorite manner, which the judges noted on their scorecards. By the middle of the fight, the situation evened out, and GGG took some rounds. Alvarez was clearly tired and in certain episodes allowed Golovkin to lead. This culminated in Gennady's main success over the two fights. In the 9th round, he seriously shook his opponent with a clean, straight right. The punch invigorated Golovkin, but his stamina started to show. He was breathing heavily. He won rounds but did not finish off his opponent. The atmosphere heated up in the 12th round. The boxers greeted each other, hit gloves, and hardly defended at the start. In the finale, the guys showed open boxing, exchanging several hefty punches. After the gong, both raised their hands in victory. The final judges' score, 114, 114, and twice 115, 113 in favor of Alvarez. Saul won and once again exceeded expectations. Canelo Alvarez versus Caleb Plant.
That you don't believe me. You said he was going to dog walk me. And what happened? He got his ass dog walked. And he got set on his ass twice. So Miguel Cotto's brother can make you do the chicken dance, but I can't? Yeah, okay.
On the night of November 7th in Las Vegas, there was a boxing event whose main attraction was the championship fight for the WBC, WBA, WBO, and IBF super middleweight belts. This fight was for the title of the undisputed world champion in the middleweight class and carried with it a certain intrigue. Victory in this matchup granted Saul the title of the King of Boxing and marked the first time in history that someone became the undisputed world champion in this weight class. Caleb Plant, who had recently risen to the top of his division, was considered an underdog, yet many experts gave him a better chance against the famed Mexican. He possessed qualities that distinguished him from all of Saul's other opponents. Caleb was at the peak of his career, and his specialty was adapting to the opponent, mixing styles and changing the pace and density of the fight. Besides all the aforementioned attributes, Plant had incredible speed, endurance, knockout power, and timing. Saul did not see Caleb as a worthy opposition and publicly treated this fight as a mere unification of belts, showing disrespect and not acknowledging his competitor's merits.
Saturday night, you got your first undisputed champ, and his name is Caleb Plant.
At the press conference between the fighters, an open brawl ensued, which further heightened interest in the match not only among boxing fans, but also among sports enthusiasts in general. Credit must be given to Plant. He performed far better than many had predicted. Few expected the fight to last more than 6-7 rounds, but Caleb proved through action, not trash talk, that his championship status was no fluke. He chose the only correct tactic that could pose a challenge to Alvarez. Excellent jabbing, constant footwork, and working off the back foot. Plant initially caused some trouble for the favorite with this approach. Even with his obvious advantage in power and class, Canelo needed time to adjust to his opponent. Saul constantly pressed, effectively moving between levels, but Plant countered in response. By the midpoint of the fight, Alvarez only looked slightly better. It was at this moment that the tide turned. Saul ramped up to maximum speed, accelerated an already high pace, focusing on his opponent's body. This almost immediately yielded results. Plant physically declined sharply and simply stopped moving. The rest was a matter of technique. Canelo became the first to claim all belts in the super middleweight class and the 6th in history to achieve such a feat. Notably, the Mexican needed less than a year and only 4 fights to do this. No one has ever become the undisputed world champion so powerfully. Canelo Alvarez versus John Ryder.
Yeah, I'm in my best, and I'm the best fighter out there. You know, I lose with one of the best fighter in 175. So, and I'm trying to do history, to do everything different to other fighters, go up and down and in weight classes. So it's not easy, but I like challenge, and I feel in my best, and you're gonna see.
Ryder was coming off a streak of 4 victories against strong opponents, but this did not help him shed his underdog status. Experts unanimously named Alvarez as the favorite. However, Ryder had his own strengths, and his counterattacking style could pose a problem for the champion. Everyone was confident in Saul's invincibility, as he had long proven himself. The Mexican himself even promised to end his career if he lost.
There have been some rumors out there that maybe you're fighting back here because this could be your last fight. Is there any chance this is your last fight?
No, you look, if John Ryder beat me, so I'm done.
From the first seconds, Canelo seized the center of the ring, trying to catch his opponent with his famous body shots. Ryder tried to respond and even managed to pin the Mexican against the ropes a couple of times, but the initiative remained in Alvarez's hands. It seemed that the challenger had nothing to offer the champion. Most often, John was in a defensive position, merely trying to minimize damage. Saul calmly did his work and scored points, hardly receiving any in return. By the 5th round, Ryder's face was seriously damaged. Notably, Canelo also frequently targeted the body, which gradually slowed the challenger down. The knockdown, in which the champion sent his opponent to the mat with a powerful 1-2, was not surprising. It had been building up. But the Brit managed to hold on until the break, especially since Saul was not rushing the fight. However, in the following 3 minutes, John landed several good shots through the Mexican's defense, regaining his confidence. Nevertheless, towards the end of the 8th round, the boxer nicknamed the Gorilla was knocked down again, and again got up. In the 9th round, it turned into a brawl. Canelo unusually took hits, though his punches were still stronger and more precise. Ryder, despite having fallen twice earlier, still had plenty of energy. The Brit moved lighter and aimed to work in bursts, but it was not enough to turn the fight around. After 12 rounds, Alvarez rightfully won by unanimous decision. Canelo Alvarez versus Jermell Charlo. The belts at stake were the WBA Super, the WBC, WBO, IBF, and the ring in the super middleweight division, all owned by the Mexican fighter. Canelo approached the fight following 2 confident victories over Gennady Golovkin and John Ryder, amidst rumors of his decline. Many experts concurred that Alvarez was on a downward trajectory and far from his best condition. Jermell Charlo moved up a weight class for the fight against Canelo. The American was the undisputed world champion in the light middleweight class, but he had not been seen in the ring for nearly a year and a half. Saul was determined to put an end to the debates about his condition.
I feel great. I feel ready for this fight, and yes, Jermell is right. I have nothing to prove, but especially this time, I have something to prove to him, because he never believed in my skills. He always calling me out and never believed in my skills, and now I have the opportunity to show him my skills, and that's motivate myself.
The fight began with the traditional scanning of the opponent and the contenders trying to find their range. Canelo appeared to be in better form, while Charlo was in no rush to force the action. In the early rounds, Alvarez was significantly more active and outperformed Jermell. The American boxer focused on movement and seemed to set a goal just to reach the second half of the fight. The problem was that Charlo allowed Canelo too much leeway, and the latter took advantage of it, calmly taking round after round. Just when it seemed that Jermell had adapted, even managing to take a round and ready to compete, Alvarez stepped up and started landing heavy punches. In the 7th round, Saul even knocked his opponent down. The American continued the fight, but it no longer seemed competitive. Canelo didn't manage to achieve a knockout, but the judges were decisive. Canelo confidently won by unanimous decision and defended his title as the undisputed world champion in the super middleweight class. It was a truly dominant performance from Saul, who outclassed his opponent in every aspect. It had been a long time since the Mexican had shown such a confident fight. After the match, it became clear to everyone, Saul Alvarez is the greatest boxer of his time. Even Floyd Mayweather acknowledged the greatness of the Mexican.
Congratulations for you.
Disputing the fact that Saul has long surpassed himself seems foolish. The legacy of the red-haired Mexican will live forever. He is one of the greatest boxers of his era. Soon, he is set to fight Munguia and once again prove to everyone that he is the undisputed king. The king of Mexico, the king of middleweight, the king of boxing.